What's up, wrestling fans? It is time for another edition of The Voice of Wrestling. I am your host, Chris Cash, and it's actually a special edition of The Voice of Wrestling. It is the official WrestleMania 30 preview and predictions edition of The Voice of Wrestling. As always, I am your host, Chris Cash. You can follow me on Twitter at RealityOfChris. And as always, I'm joined by Nick Paglino over there in New York City. We are pre-recording tonight's show because, Nick, you actually have a very special night planned tonight. You've got a live Raw viewing party there in New York City. All the details are on WrestleZone.com if you'd like information. But Nick, real quickly, you can give everybody here a little bit more information about what you're going to be doing, because it does also pertain to people that are not in New York City. You're going to be doing a live Wrestle Reaction broadcast from there as well. So tonight, immediately following Raw on WrestleZone.com, you'll be joining the Wrestle Reaction guys for a live Raw reaction show as well, right?
Yeah, that's right, Chris. Tonight in New York City at Public House, New York, I'm going to be joining Frank Monzo tonight. We're going to be doing Wrestle Reaction live from New York City. We're going to discuss all of the Raw fallout, and hopefully we'll have a packed live audience behind us. So, it'll be sort of like a live studio audience, which will give the fans and the viewers something better to look at behind me than what's usually behind
your kitchen sink, yeah.
Which is either the kitchen sink or a really old crock pot, or in this case, just, I don't even know what this is.
I'm not sure.
This is like a cabinet system, but it hasn't been opened in like over 30 years, so I don't even know what's inside of it.
But it works.
Probably just more cabinets. Probably like a Russian nesting cabinet.
Want to let everybody know also our sponsor, I've got their shirt right here. You can see it, and it's so I think this one is Support Indie Wrestling. I thought it said I support, but it doesn't. Just Support Indie Wrestling right there. If you want to buy this shirt, you can go to barbershopwindow.com. Use the discount code VOW for a 10% discount off your purchase. The really cool blazer is not included, but Support Indie Wrestling is available on barbershopwindow.com. Also, real quick, I want to give a special shout-out to my cousin David, who I'm sure is watching our show tonight. He's heading to Little Rock for brain surgery this week. It's the second brain surgery. He's about 13 years old. And I just want to say to David, stay strong, buddy. I'll see you this weekend. And for those of you who don't know, David and I actually host a wrestling talk show each week called Two Cousins Talking Wrestling. We just recorded a special 2013 WWE Awards edition of the show yesterday that is now available on VOW's YouTube channel. So go to youtube.com/VOW Radio to see David and I and see who we chose as the winners of the 2013 WWE Awards. I'm sure David would love to know what you think about our picks. And I would, of course, appreciate any positive feedback that you'd be able to give. I want to say, Nick, I thought it was really cool when David and I were recording this yesterday. Normally we record on Tuesdays, but he's trying to work up a sign off at the end of the show, for each week. And so he's coming up with one. But last week, he did yours. He said that he got it from you. So at the end of the show, he saluted and signed off like that. And I think he had seen you do that. And so he's trying to come up with one that's not yours. He doesn't want to steal from you. So maybe you and I can help him. Somebody can help him.
Well, how about this? Yeah. Here's my idea.
All right.
How about he can take that? He can do the trademarked salute.
You'll give him that
as his sign off, and what I'll do is I'll do the reverse of it.
Right.
As opposed to doing this, I'll just jam my hand into my face.
That's good. I think he would.
So I'll do it the opposite way, which will be more, it's more dangerous for me.
Yeah.
But, I can handle the danger element of it, and I'll let him have the official salute.
Yeah, man, I think that's great. So, David, there you go, buddy. It's all yours. And, guys, obviously check that out on YouTube. Hey, without further delay, man, let's jump into it because it's a big week. It's WrestleMania week. Obviously, tonight we were pre-recording tonight's show. So for those of you that are checking it out, getting ready for Raw, getting geared up. Nick, I wanted to start off with asking you, is this WrestleMania 30 Does the WWE Network and the fact that it's going to air there, I mean, is that adding any type of extra layer of excitement for you? Does WrestleMania 30, how does it feel in comparison to past WrestleManias as far as you being anxious and excited, gearing up for it? Does the WrestleMania or does the WWE Network play into that at all? Does it seem to help? Does it matter in your mind? And just overall, how much are you looking forward to this WrestleMania compared to past WrestleManias?
Well, it's a good question because I was thinking about this off the air a little bit today. You know, I think we'll really start to feel it more once we settle into WrestleMania week. You know, WWE, of course, announced a full network schedule today, which is going to have a lot of content, including, you know, the live press conference that's taking place on Tuesday that we generally don't get a chance to see. Of course, the Hall of Fame being broadcast in its entirety on Saturday. They're doing sort of a red carpet live special for the Hall of Fame. You're having these WrestleMania Today specials, which are going to be presented throughout the week with, of course, access highlights. We might even be able to get to see a match or two if they decide to do that with some of the NXT talent. So, you know, I think once we settle into the week, it's really the network, specifically when you talk about the network and what that's bringing to the table for WrestleMania this year. I think that's going to get more exciting, and I think we're certainly going to feel like it is WrestleMania week once we start to get to watch some of that content that they're going to roll out during the week. But you know, otherwise, I tend to feel like this WrestleMania sort of feels, here we are on Monday, this is the beginning of the week, heading into WrestleMania. It sort of feels like it always does, year after year,
Sure.
where, you know, WrestleMania has crept up on us. All of a sudden, WrestleMania is 6 days away, and we tend to think to ourselves, well, there's only 2 to 3, maybe 4 matches that we're really looking forward to, that the storylines have been really solid for heading into WrestleMania week. But I think that's something that WWE expects at this point. You know, I think that's how WrestleMania is presented at this point. I think they know, you know, look, this event is sort of a 2 to 3 match pay-per-view, and then of course you're going to get the Hall of Fame. There's always going to be those guys that are making their returns. For instance, we're going to see Warrior this week. Yep. We've got Hogan making his return, Scott Hall being inducted, whatever happens with a lot of those legends and guys that come back for WrestleMania and for the WrestleMania week. So I don't think this feels much different than any other WrestleMania, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. We'll sort of wait and see how much the network adds to the vibe as they start rolling out the content.
Well, and I think as you mentioned, the network schedule came out, and for me, I am kind of interested to see, say, Thursday, Friday, Saturday for sure. They've got a lot of live programs on there that are going to be unique this year. We haven't seen that before. There's not a channel you can go to on TV just to watch wrestling and get geared up for the biggest event of the year in pro wrestling, like you can for the Super Bowl and things like that. So for me, I really do think it's going to add a level of excitement as we get closer with some of the programming that they are going to have on the WWE Network. I know personally I'm going to be watching the WWE Network a lot more this week than I probably ever will in one given week's time. So I'm very much looking forward to that. The other thing before we really jump into the matches, Nick, that I wanted to ask you about is WrestleMania Sunday itself. We talked about it a little bit last week because obviously people were kind of saying 6 hours when it was announced that they were going to have a 2-hour pre-show. Now that's divided into 1 hour, separate hours. That will, you know, the first hour will be available on all of the outlets that they have available for the pre-show, and then of course the second hour will just be on the WWE Network. Now, Nick, you and I obviously made sense of it last week. They're really just trying to get as many people to sign up at that last minute as they can. So you want to send people for that last hour, that hour heading into WrestleMania, to the WWE Network. They've got to sign up to watch it, obviously. And that's really no different than what any pre-show is meant to do. But for me, 6 hours of pro wrestling, not to mention the live stuff going on earlier in the day on that Sunday. I haven't really looked at the entire schedule, so I don't know what all the WWE Network has planned, but I would imagine most of it's going to be centered around WrestleMania 30. And just like the Super Bowl, if you're a big football fan, you have events and major things planned for that day. Most people are getting together real early. If they're going to have a watch party, a viewing party with their friends, they're getting ready. And you're actually going to have a channel, a specific exclusive channel that you can go to and really get geared up for the big event that night. And to me, 6 hours, 10 hours, 15 hours, I really don't think that it's too much. I'm looking forward to WrestleMania Sunday this year because I've got a network, a channel that I can have on all day long. And, it's a little dangerous because by the time WrestleMania comes around, Nick, I might not be, fully functioning to the point that I can watch WrestleMania. But it's really good for the fans. I think the WWE Network is going to add a little bit. We don't see it right this minute, but I obviously think that we will. Moving into the actual card, Nick, in the matches, we know it was announced that the WWE Tag Team title Fatal 4-Way match will be on the pre-show, which obviously it'll be in that hour leading up to WrestleMania on the network. And it's going to be the Usos, of course, as the champions defending against the Real Americans, Ryback and Los Matadores. Now, Nick, I've got to ask you, a lot of fans somewhat upset over this announcement. Now, I don't know what you're seeing. Are you seeing fans, and of course, what's your opinion, but are you seeing fans seem to be more upset with the participants in the match versus the fact that it's going to be on the pre-show, or is it kind of a combination of both, one over the other? What have you been noticing? And then, of course, what is your opinion of it specifically?
Well, it's definitely a combination of both. I think what stands out the most is that the Rhodes brothers are not involved in this match. Here's the team that had the tag team titles for a long time, before the New Age Outlaws were introduced into the picture. And, you've got, and even the New Age Outlaws aren't involved in the match. So it seems a bit odd that these three tag teams who had kind of really been feuding, with the Rhodes brothers having the titles, losing them to the Outlaws, then the Usos winning. Those three tag teams, only one of those teams is actually in the tag team championship match at WrestleMania. Right. And now you've got teams like Ryback and Curtis Axel and Los Matadores, and I really feel like most of the fans out there, including myself, feel, why are these guys in the match? What have these teams done to earn themselves a tag team title match, especially on the biggest show of the year at WrestleMania? And then you couple that with the fact that the tag team title match isn't even being featured on the actual card. This really doesn't give much importance to the tag team division, the tag team title match at WrestleMania this year, and it did really look like for a while there that, all right, things were really starting to brew for the tag team division. We saw some great tag teams. The Usos, it's time for them. It's about time for them to step up. I think the New Age Outlaws, I know that this probably hasn't been a very popular opinion, but I think the New Age Outlaws coming back has breathed some good nostalgic life into the tag team division. I think they're very helpful to the new tag teams that are coming up. So to see that momentum building and then really sort of stall out with a pre-show match featuring your champions and then three other teams that don't really belong there. I'd say the Real Americans belong there, but two other teams that really don't belong in that match. It just doesn't speak very highly of the tag team titles at WrestleMania.
Well, and here's my problem with it. I feel like that, what you said is 100% right. I think the Real Americans made sense, but I think when you look at it, WWE had an opportunity in my mind for the tag team titles to be kind of the relevant mid-card titles on the card. When you look at Big E and what he's doing, or Dean Ambrose, with the IC and the US championships, they're not going to be featured at all that we know of on WrestleMania 30. So they had the opportunity for, outside of the World Heavyweight Championship, to be another good title match on the card, and they squandered it away, not by just the participants, obviously, because Ryback and Los Matadores have absolutely no business being in there. but also the fact that they're putting it on the pre-show. So to me, it absolutely makes a lot of sense why people are upset, because to me, what you should have had would have been the Usos defending against the Outlaws, which makes perfect sense at that point. You should have had Goldust and Cody Rhodes in that match as well. And then you throw in the Real Americans as well, who have been really getting over quite well in recent weeks. You've got a fatal four-way match at that point that matters and that deserves to be on the WrestleMania card, especially when the other and not on not the pre-show, on the main card. And when you have the other mid-card titles completely lost in obscurity at this point and not on the card anyway. So I think that's where the frustration lies with most fans. I know that's where it lies with me and Nick. Obviously, it seems that's where it lies with you. But as far as our thoughts on that, it is what it is. I'm looking forward to the match. I think it'll be a good match itself. But if you don't care about the outcome, it's, or the participants in the match as much, it's really difficult to care about how good of a quality wrestling match it is, despite the fact that I think it'll be pretty decent in a variety of ways.
And even, before we move on, just to say, I think the Usos retain here.
Absolutely.
And I think another thing I don't like about this is, I think you and I were in agreement. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. I think you and I were in agreement. Cesaro does not need to be in the main event at WrestleMania. He does not need to be competing for the title at WrestleMania. But I think he needs to be featured on the pay-per-view in a much bigger and better way than he is right now. At this point, the guy's not even on the actual WrestleMania show.
No, he's not even, and that's the other thing, that he's not in the Battle Royal either. Everybody that's in this match is not included in that Battle Royal. So, Cesaro's place on WrestleMania 30 is legitimately, that's it right now, on the pre-show. And I think a lot of fans are upset about that. No, I agree with you 100%.
And again, you never know. There are 4 spots. As of right now, there are 4 spots remaining in the Battle Royal match. There are, of course, that always leads to speculation that there might be some surprise entrance or something along those lines. But, so somebody like a Cesaro or, the Real Americans could be added into that bout because obviously we know now the Andre the Giant bout's going to take place after the tag title match. So they could be in it. But, at this point, I think you've got to, Cesaro had so much great momentum going on right now. And you'd really, and again, a lot of people run wild with guys who start picking up momentum. They say, he's got to win the title at WrestleMania. No, that doesn't have to happen. But he needs to be featured in a much more prominent role than this. And, I'm sure he'll have a great showing on the pre-show. But, I think they really got to keep that ball rolling with a guy like Cesaro. But ultimately, I think the Usos retain.
So, WWE Tag Team title match, Fatal 4-way. Both of us have the Usos going over. Of course, we'll keep track of this, and we'll see during WrestleMania on 30. And, of course, next week, Nick and I will find out how well we did in our picks and everything. So the Usos, we believe, go on to win and retain. Can't really see any other person, maybe Real Americans as the I guess, dark horse as a potential that you could see, but that's about it. So we move on to the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, Nick, and running down some of you, as you just mentioned, 4 spots not claimed for this match, and just some of the names obviously in this: Mark Henry, The Big Show, Kofi Kingston, Christian, Mahal, Drew McIntyre, Morella, Heath Slater, Big E, Goldust, Cody Rhodes, Titus O'Neil, Dolph Ziggler, The Miz, Sheamus, Fandango, Sandow, Del Rio, Mysterio, Brodus Clay, Justin Gabriel, Darren Young, R-Truth, Sin Cara, Zack Ryder, The Great Khali. I decided not to just do a few names as I suggested. I just went ahead and gave you them all. So we've got 4 names unconfirmed at this point, not confirmed. Don't know exactly who those are going to be, whether it'll be, like you mentioned, Nick, maybe a couple of guys, Cesaro, some guys from the tag team match that could come back in and do it. I wouldn't be surprised, and if that's the case, I would probably assume Cesaro is really the only one that maybe makes sense, other than Swagger, if you're wanting to kind of continue with that tension and the potential breakup there. So I would almost guess, but that could just be a cause of tension and friction between those two in and of itself if Cesaro was the only one that got entered. So you could always play that. It really depends on what they plan to do with this match and if they're going to have some surprise guys enter that you don't know. Nick, a report I wanted to bring up that I think we posted on WrestleZone, you can give some more details behind it if you have that. But we reported, and there's been reports anyway, I'm pretty sure WrestleZone put it up, that WWE has actually been in contact with a lot of mega stars from the past 30 years of WrestleMania. Now, when you've got 6 hours with two pre-shows, basically, and then, of course, 4 hours of WrestleMania, it kind of makes sense that you've got plenty of time there to have a lot of cameos, a lot of special appearances, fun appearances for a lot of previous stars if you want to, but you also have 4 spots available in this Battle Royal. How much do you expect that there could be some surprise guys that we are not necessarily expecting or anticipating and not active roster members that could enter this Battle Royal?
Well, I would think maybe a guy like Rob Van Dam is definitely someone that could do it. We've already reported that he is expected to return at the very latest on Raw next week. So, having him come back, enter the Battle Royal, win the Battle Royal would give him some really great return momentum. Because I think a lot of times what happens with a guy like Rob Van Dam, or even these guys like a Chris Jericho, someone who makes the return for a few months and then he disappears and he comes back, it's always difficult reintroducing these guys.
Right.
And, not making it feel like, oh, all right, so-and-so's back for the 100th time, and how do we make this feel special? So if you brought a guy like Rob Van Dam back, he wins the Battle Royal, he appears on Raw Monday night, having won that, that specialty match that has debuted this year, I think that would be something that, could give him a good momentum boost for his return. Other than that, the Ultimate Warrior. I think this match would be the perfect vehicle to get him involved. He said he wants to go. He said he wants to return to the ring. I can't see him working a full-length match at WrestleMania. I think we both agreed on that. Mm-hmm. So I think, him running in, he does his ropes, maneuver, he does his splash, he hits a couple of good spots, he eliminates a couple of guys, and then he gets eliminated. I think that would be a great way to utilize him in a physical capacity at the pay-per-view. Other than that, I don't really know who you could bring back other than, maybe some surprise old names or some of the guys that we've seen in the past, like a Ricky Steamboat or a Sergeant Slaughter. These are usually guys who have those cameos maybe at the Royal Rumble. But I would think right now, just as far as pure entertainment goes, and guys who I would really like to see come back, something that would make the match logical. I think Rob Van Dam and I think Ultimate Warrior, I think those are your 2 top guys right now that could come back, make a really good impact, have those surprise appearances that really mean something, and then, of course, with a guy like RVD, give him that good momentum to return. That said, do I think that's what's going to happen? Not really. I think maybe those guys do have the potential of coming back and appearing in the match. But ultimately, I think Big Show is going to win this one. I think they're probably going to do it because Big Show is the guy that reminds you of Andre the Giant. He's the new giant in professional wrestling, or at least WWE sort of always put him over as the new giant in pro wrestling. But let me ask you this, Chris. If RVD is coming back on Monday night, if he returns to WWE in the Battle Royal prior to Raw, does he need to win that match? Does it hurt him if he doesn't win that match?
No, well, because it's RVD, and I think that they've now gotten what they could out of RVD. With his return, the last time around, they wanted to push him for a minute, it seems like, but I don't think with the way his contract is structured, and it seems to be pretty accurate with the reports that we had the last time around when he actually returned for good, came over from TNA. The report was that he has kind of this block schedule, contract where he'll come back for a few months, he'll leave for a few months, he'll come back for a few months. And I don't see WWE putting a lot of faith or a lot of stock into him with that type of agreement, that type of situation. Nor do I think they really should. RVD is a guy that I feel is kind of a commodity act. He's always going to have his cult following. He's always going to get over. He needs to be a baby face. He needs to be a good guy for the rest of his career, especially with kind of this part-time schedule. He comes over, he does his thing for a couple of months, and really I think his job needs to be putting over other guys. So to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense for him to win something like the Battle Royal when I don't expect them to do a ton with him outside of the mid-card division beyond that. And I don't see how much he can gain from winning a match like this. This is the first annual, probably like you had said in the previous weeks, Nick, probably going to be the only time we see this match. They may do something similar, but a gimmick-style match next week, but it probably won't have anything to do with Andre the Giant. Maybe next year is kind of a way to get people on the card. And I like that idea. So if we're looking at this as a standalone match, the only time we'll see it, then to me that's kind of a special thing. And I like your pick. I think Big Show makes a lot of sense for that reason. But I'm going to go out and say a little different. I'm going to hope that WWE does not take this too lightly. And Big Show winning it because of the fact that it's an Andre the Giant Battle Royal, Nick, to me is taking it a little bit too lightly. I'd like to see them give this to a guy that actually could use it to his benefit. And in that, and when I look at the names involved right now, again, not excluding any guys that could come back and make a surprise deal, then I look at a guy like Christian potentially. I look at a guy like Damian Sandow, who's really had nothing going. I look at a guy like Dolph Ziggler being there that could really use this, and that's about it. I mean, Sheamus is always involved. If they ever plan on having him involved in the main event level, which I don't think they need him there, and I don't think they expect him to go there anytime soon. A guy like The Miz, obviously, if they ever feel like they want to do something with him again, just get him back to even a credible mid-carder. Right now, The Miz is not really even a credible mid-carder. I say give it to someone like that. The Big Show at this point in his career really does not need any extra accolades or any recognition. I understand where you say. So I think Big Show is probably the front runner and most likely to win it, but I really don't think that's the way they should go. I hope they go with a guy like Dolph Ziggler, maybe Cody Rhodes for all you Cody Rhodes fans, and I like him too. I don't expect him to win it either, but maybe a guy, like I said, a guy like Dolph Ziggler would be great in my mind, or a guy like Damian Sandow would be my choices. Sheamus makes sense too.
That could be a guy where they feel like, Sheamus isn't booked in that high-profile match this year. This is a guy who has been in championship matches before at WrestleMania. He doesn't have that high-profile match this year, so maybe they give him the win. And I wouldn't mind that, you know what I mean? I think Sheamus has done a good job of building some momentum since he's returned to WWE off injury. That's a very difficult thing to do, especially when you're gone from injury as long as he was gone.
Right.
And I think he's got some good momentum, and I wouldn't mind seeing that continue with a win for him in the Battle Royal. But like you said, any of those other names, the Dolph Zigglers, the Damian Sandows, sure, I'd like to see them win it because they need it. These are guys that could really profit from that win. I think we're both in agreement that the last person on earth who needs to win a match like this is Big Show. And again, I think that will tell us, if Big Show wins this match, that will tell us the value that WWE is putting into a match like this, whether they really want to use this to build someone, to give them a good storyline, to really springboard them out of WrestleMania, or if this is just sort of a gimmick thing that they're going to decide to do this year, and that it may be a one-and-done type thing that we never see
Well, real
again.
quick then, our picks, though, Nick, are definitely... you're saying Big Show, though. As far as
I'm going Big Show. That's who I think is going to win.
And I'm going to say Big Show as well, just because I agree with you there that I think that's what they're going to do. Let me say this as before we close on this particular WWE needs to take advantage of opportunities like this. In pro wrestling these days, it is tough to get over on a major level. And sometimes any little thing that you can give them that's unique to just them, that nobody else has the opportunity to say or tout or brag about, can go a long way. You never know what's going to stick. Owen Hart, again, I keep bringing him up with the slammies. To me, that was amazing, and it stands out in my mind as something that really helped him out. And for me, a guy like Dolph Ziggler, and that's my want to pick. That's my guy that I would love for them to give this to. He's an arrogant show-off. Him winning this, he could take that trophy and use it kind of as a heel, but also get over if they want to kind of keep him going the babyface route that they've had him lately. I really like Dolph Ziggler as the winner. I expect them to give it to Big Show, but that will tell me just how much WWE is out of touch to me with their mid-card and developing stars, because Big Show absolutely does not need this. That makes sense, though, creatively and storyline and for this particular match itself. But why not take this match and give it to somebody that might be able to use it and elevate themselves to another level? And a guy like Dolph Ziggler, even The Miz, Damian Sandow, any of those guys could do that. But I'm going to go just as far as my official pick with Big Show. So with that in mind, we move on, Nick, to the next match that we'll go with, the 6-man tag team match. The Shield, of course, versus Kane and the New Age Outlaws. Why the New Age Outlaws got put with Kane on this, why the New Age Outlaws and Kane decided that that's what they're going to do with the Shield. A lot of people were kind of hoping, maybe expecting the Shield would have a triple threat match at WrestleMania. Personally, I like the idea that the Shield is at least remaining together for now. That being said, Nick, I turn it over to you with your initial thoughts about this match. And I don't know if you said this in the past, but for some reason I keep thinking you believe that the Shield might actually break up at WrestleMania. Did I hear that from the past? Did you say that, or do you believe that?
Well, I think it's a definite possibility. You know, the Shield has been booked oddly lately, you know, because we saw a lot of tension with the Shield. We saw a lot of the teasing of their breakup, which seemed absolutely imminent.
And then they decided to go get away from it.
And then all of a sudden, yeah, you know, it's this sort of babyface turn, you know, and all reports are indicating that they're doing this to really try to get the crowd behind Roman Reigns as a babyface for when the split actually happens. Right. And, you know, the idea, I think, is that, you know, Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose will continue on as that heel tag team, and Roman Reigns will be pushed as a top babyface, you know, potentially against them, you know. Now, does that mean it's going to happen? Does that mean they're going to pull the trigger on the Shield at WrestleMania? I'm not sure. You know, have they gotten behind them enough as a babyface team where they can do that on Sunday? You know, you've got the 6-man tag. What's the classic thing that always happens? You know, the match is going on for a while. Roman Reigns is beaten up. He needs the tag. He tries to make the tag. You know, Rollins and Ambrose, you know, bail out. They leave him in the middle of the ring to get his ass beat. You know, he ends up losing the match. You know, that's sort of that typical two guys turning on another guy in a team. You know, if they go that route, Chris, is it going to be effective this soon after them trying to sort of get these guys over as a babyface team?
I agree with you. I don't know that it would be that effective. I think, though, that the idea that WWE is definitely wanting to break them up right now, I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think that they do. I think that even beyond WrestleMania, I think you can still get more out of the Shield and maybe drag it on for even another year and then really start breaking them up by, you know, maybe January, Royal Rumble time of next year, and build to something really, really big for these guys by WrestleMania. I think the Wyatts and the Shield within the next year, again, before we get to that point, January and on to WrestleMania for WrestleMania 31, I think the Shield and the Wyatts could have a few months within there, maybe towards the end of this year, you know, when it's a little bit downtime in pro wrestling. I wouldn't be surprised if we had the Shield and the Wyatts for another few months. They'll have a few more months to obviously build and elevate themselves, and then let's have them as the focal point, or one of the focal points towards the later year, end of the year, when wrestling is kind of during that downslide and there's not a lot going on. I think you could kind of really put a lot of the Raws and SmackDowns and pay-per-views on their back, and fans would buy into that. And then by this time next year, let's focus on breaking them up and maybe having a big match between the three members of the Shield at a WrestleMania. I like that idea. So I really think and I hope that the Shield stick around a little bit longer after WrestleMania, even for the majority, again, of 2014, and then maybe this time next year, let's start breaking them up. But again, I won't be surprised if they decide to go that route. I think that they could take this next year, even if they decided to keep them together, and still kind of elevate Roman Reigns as a singles guy, and maybe Ambrose and Rollins as a tag team, and them still remain in the group. I think the group is what really has made them a marquee name. When you split them up, it's going to be a lot more complicated and a lot more challenging for them to continue sustaining that momentum on their own. So I'm not ready for the Shield to break up is the bottom line for me. I think this match at WrestleMania is going to be interesting. I'm not near as invested as I think I should be, and I'm kind of curious to what happens to the New Age Outlaws after WrestleMania as well. I mean, do they stick around? They continue going? Because if they do, then I hope you get away from this stuff with the New Age Outlaws being heels. I think they need to be good guys. If they're not going to be involved in the tag team division and helping elevate the babyface team of the Usos, then let's make the New Age Outlaws what the fans want them to be anyway. A nostalgic act that they can get behind, that are still kind of cool and relevant, and I believe the New Age Outlaws need to be babyfaces if they're going to stick around after WrestleMania. Kane isn't that relevant in my mind. But overall, I am interested to see what the Shield does as a babyface group, starting with this Sunday at WrestleMania. And as far as official predictions, Nick, I give it to the Shield. I don't think the breakup is happening right away at WrestleMania or even right afterward. I really believe they stick together, and with that, I think they get the win and the clean finish at WrestleMania 30. So I'm going with the Shield on this.
I'm going to disagree with you in terms of the finish. I think they're probably still going to tease that tension within the Shield, because I don't think that they've completely forgotten about that yet. So I think the New Age Outlaws and Kane get the win at WrestleMania. I think they do so because there's going to be some sort of breakdown of communication within the Shield. Again, that's going to sort of get back to that issue that these guys are having with each other, or at least that sort of Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose are having.
But think about it this way. They can still have that tension and win the match. You know what I mean?
They can
still have tension and win the match as far as who gets the win. But I think that makes them look a lot stronger than actually getting the loss and doing it, especially if you're going to keep them together for a little while. And why in the world does Kane and the Outlaws need to win at all?
Well, they don't. See, I mean, you have to understand that none of this is about Kane. None of this is about the Outlaws. It's all about the Shield. It's all about what's happening with the Shield. And and giving the Outlaws and Kane that victory over the Shield could really emphasize or continue to emphasize that the Shield is having problems. They're having breakdowns in terms of communication.
Well, and it's causing them to lose matches. Then that speeds up the thing to me. If they lose the match as a result of the tension and the friction that they have, then that speeds up the process of them actually splitting up. If they're still winning and having the tension, then you can drag that out for a while, which is why I think you can accomplish what you're saying and them still pick up the win. Still be as strong as a unit, as a group, and that gives you a lot more options than as soon as they lose. If they lose at WrestleMania as a result of any friction or whatever, miscommunication, however it goes down, to me, that makes it very imminent that the breakup is going to happen a lot sooner than I would like for it to. And I'm not saying that it's not necessarily going to happen that way, but I don't want it to. So I still think if they're going to keep them together, they need to win this match. And I still think they actually do want to keep them together. And especially now that they turned them baby faces, they can get over a lot better and a lot more as a baby face, since fans are really wanting to do it. And they can still kind of tease that going forward.
it's that tricky booking with the Shield lately. You know, if they really want to go forward with these guys being that strong babyface unit, then absolutely they get the clean victory at WrestleMania. But who knows? I don't know how long, because Roman Reigns had great momentum. I was never a real proponent of them turning babyface. They didn't really need to do that. Roman Reigns was winning the crowd over, no doubt. The guy's already getting himself over. Yeah. I don't see why they needed to make the entire group a babyface team. But if they did, and they really feel like they need to get behind it, and they're really not going to pull this trigger until SummerSlam, then absolutely. You've got the Shield going over clean on. But I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm still taking the Outlaws and Kane.
So as our first difference of opinion as far as the official picks go, he's taking Kane and the Outlaws. I'm taking the Shield. We'll see, obviously, what happens this Sunday. Nick, do we know the names for the Vicky Guerrero Invitational, the Divas Championship deal? Do we know?
It's all of them.
Okay.
It's just all of them. I really don't think they left out anybody. When you saw it on Raw, you had all of these people came out. I think it was pretty much every single. Even Emma was in there. So, wow. I think you had every diva out there.
Now, so how does the actual match...
And Santino Marella.
How does the actual match work?
Well, we don't know that yet because Vicky Guerrero actually posted on Twitter just a couple of days ago looking for ideas for the Vicky Guerrero Invitational. Who can help me out? It's basically, she's tweeting, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Right. So it's not the Vicky Guerrero. The Invitational is not really the name of the match. It's the name of the invitation for ideas to help her. Okay. Yeah.
Right. We are inviting you to book WrestleMania for us, and we're not going to pay you.
Right.
That's the name of the match.
That's the name of the match. All right. So we really can't really talk much about that, other than I guess what we could do is predict. Do we think AJ Lee loses the championship at WrestleMania?
It's very possible, because Total Divas is heading into, obviously Total Divas is finishing with Brie Bella and Daniel Bryan getting married. We know how closely WWE is following the Total Divas storylines on Raw. That's the reason why Naomi is still wearing the eye patch. Medically, she doesn't need it anymore. Right. But because she has it on Total Divas, which was shot months ago, they want to try to make it look current.
Absolutely.
So they're keeping that up on TV. It makes sense. But I could very easily see them do that, and that could be a good indication, actually, of what they plan to do with Daniel Bryan later in the night at WrestleMania. If Brie Bella wins that title, there's a very good possibility Daniel Bryan could end up winning the World Heavyweight Championship if WWE really wants to put that much stock into the creative direction that Total Divas is going in, which, as we know, is going to culminate with the big wedding between Bryan and Bella. Yeah. The two of them could very well come out of WrestleMania winning the championship. So if Total Divas wasn't on the docket, then I would say AJ Lee retains this, because this is one of those, let's just take as many talents as we can and throw them in a match because they don't have a place on the card. But because of Total Divas, I could very easily see Brie Bella winning this match, and she'd be the only other person that I would see winning this aside from AJ Lee.
Well, and I guess I hate it because for that reason, I think that AJ Lee, the fact that they really haven't done a lot with her in the last few weeks, it's gonna really mess up what could have been for the Divas Championship had they spent the last month or two really building up a credible opponent for her that fans would have actually gotten behind at WrestleMania. There's no doubt AJ Lee has fans willing and wanting to see her week in and week out, but they just haven't given her the ability to shine. Now, how much of that has anything to do with CM Punk or anything like that, I really don't know. They obviously didn't decide to just completely strip her of the title, but at the same time, it is really kind of interesting to me that they have not done more with her. And so I really don't know exactly what they're going to do, but I can kind of see where you're saying because of Total Divas, it really won't surprise me if they decide to put the title on her. And I don't think the fans really would think much of it either way because they haven't done a ton with AJ, regardless of the fact that they do put over from time to time how long she's had the title. So I agree, but we won't really do any official picks on that. We don't know the details of it, so there's really no point. The Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar. Now, Nick, you and I have talked about this plenty in the past. So as far as the Undertaker and Brock Lesnar, both of us obviously, and I'll speak for you because I can only imagine, the Undertaker is our pick as far as the actual match is concerned, correct? I mean, you would agree that obviously the Undertaker is the pick here. So we can move on.
103%.
And a half percent. So we can
just 103.
So you
don't get ridiculous and start adding.
Yeah, that's too much.
103 and a half is completely unrealistic.
So the Undertaker wins the match,
and mathematically impossible.
And we've talked about this match ad nauseum. I mean, obviously, how much people are going to care about it. I think they've done a good enough job. Now, Nick, I guess what really comes down to is, do we get the official word that it'll be a gimmick match at WrestleMania or a casket match tonight on Raw?
We might.
Do you think we
very well might? It. What I think it does is it puts the odds. Not that I really think anyone, at least the casual audience, not that I think the casual fan or the mainstream fan really has any doubt that The Undertaker can go toe-to-toe with Brock Lesnar. But I definitely think, more of the hardcore audience, the internet wrestling fan, the fans that have followed Brock Lesnar as a fighter, followed his MMA career, I think we're sort of looking at this combo of Undertaker, especially at the age that he's at right now, and Brock Lesnar, and we're saying to ourselves, this looks like a mismatch.
Right.
This looks like Brock Lesnar is going to kill this guy, which is probably the reason why they've given The Undertaker the advantage so far in what we've seen between Taker and Lesnar on television. And we've got one more shot at taking a look at this tonight on Raw, and so they have been teasing that casket. If you make it a casket match, it puts the quote-unquote odds in The Undertaker's favor. It's his match type. It's his environment. Typically, Undertaker opponents are always terrified of the casket, so that gives them a weakness.
And that really only matters for casual fans, though. I mean, internet fans, the favor's already and will always be in Taker's favor.
Always be in Taker's
favor. So for casual fans, it probably does add that element of, he has a chance here, and it really probably just because it's a casket match. And how long has it been since we've seen a casket match? I mean, I don't even remember.
I couldn't tell you. At WrestleMania, I couldn't tell you. But I don't think it's necessary, though.
No, it's not necessary.
These are two guys. Look, if you have Undertaker versus a Mark Henry, sure, because you're not expecting a very good technical wrestling match. But if we assume that Undertaker can still go at close to 100% for one match at WrestleMania, then there's no need for this to be a casket match. These two guys can brawl with the best of them, and these two guys can technically wrestle with the best of them. So I think these two guys can have a fantastic singles match without any stipulation. Right. And quite personally, I would rather see that than see, these two guys trying to stuff one of them into a casket, which ends up sometimes being a little, then you have the involvement, of course, of Paul Heyman, and not that he wouldn't be a player in the match anyways. I'm sure he'll get involved in some way anyways, even if it is a regular singles match. But I just don't think the stipulation is necessary. Do you?
No, I don't necessarily think it's necessary. I think though that it's good. I think as a fan, I'm looking forward to it. I haven't seen a casket match in a while. Why not? Because it adds that extra layer that I think so many people of unpredictability. Everybody is predicting a good match between these guys, and most of the match will still take place in the ring, and it'll still be a lot of good back and forth. So for me, I definitely am looking forward to it a little bit more than maybe I would have otherwise, because I kind of expect that we're going to get a very good technical match between the two of them. Brock's going to literally beat the holy hell out of The Undertaker, and then we're going to kind of get that nostalgic Undertaker again, where he's gonna, put him in the casket and shut the lid. And I think casual fans as a kid, hey, I long for the fact that kids, the age of what I remember getting to see him do that on a more regular basis, will get to witness that. I mean, there's, my cousin David, 13 years old, probably doesn't remember a lot of casket matches. So for him, he's probably really going to love the sight of that. It's scary. Coffins are scary. And the fact that he's going to put Brock Lesnar in there and shut the lid is probably going to be very, very fun to see. And I don't think it's going to take away from the greatness that is every Undertaker match at WrestleMania. So I don't know why so many fans really have an issue with it. I don't think it was necessary, but I also do think that it adds a little bit of uniqueness to it, and a little bit of unpredictability, which obviously the Undertaker matches really do need each and every year. So personally, I'm a big fan of it. I think it's good, and I'm really kind of interested to see how they decide to book it and go from there. So either way, though, Nick, both of us agree the Undertaker wins. Moving on, John Cena and Bray Wyatt. Now, Nick, you and I may have a little bit of a difference of opinion on this. Let's start off first and foremost with who we think wins. I'm going to say they go with Bray Wyatt, actually. And you may differ. You may go with Cena. For some reason, I think you probably will as far as who they're going to have win it. But I'm going to go out on a limb here. I think it's probably more of a chance that John Cena wins this. But I'm going to say that, John Cena doesn't need to win it. They're going to have their big moment with the babyface going over, most likely with Daniel Bryan. Of course, I'll talk about that in a minute. But for me, let's look at the undercard a little bit more. The Undertaker gets to go over. Daniel Bryan gets to go over twice. So let's have a heel win a big match at WrestleMania. And I think that allows for Bray Wyatt to have a little bit more opportunity to win than he maybe otherwise would have. So I'm giving it to Bray Wyatt. That's my prediction.
Chris, I hope you're right, but I think that you are 103.5% wrong.
Okay, fair enough.
In the case of John Cena, adding that 0.5% totally makes sense.
Totally is realistic now. Yeah. It is John
Cena wins here, and again, I think the writing is on the wall. John Cena, we go back to protecting John Cena and unnecessarily protecting John Cena.
We've talked about that for years now. Yeah.
We always agree that it's not necessary, but it's what WWE does. Yep. We've been getting, the latest word is WWE still intends, of course, not like we need to reiterate this, but they will, of course, intend on continuing to push John Cena as the number one guy in the company. Maybe Daniel Bryan is that number two guy following WrestleMania. John Cena is not main eventing WrestleMania. He's main evented WrestleMania last year. He main evented WrestleMania the year before. He main evented WrestleMania the year before that. This year, he's in a high-profile match, but he's not main eventing the show. I think WWE says, I think they look at that as 800 forms of red flag for him, so they're going to give him this win. It's the biggest stage of all. It is John Cena. He's not in that main event spotlight. They're going to give him this win. Will Bray Wyatt look great in the match? I absolutely think so. Will he look as good as he looked against Daniel Bryan at the Royal Rumble? I absolutely think so. And I think for WWE, that will be enough for Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania,
and that's the way
they'll give the win to John Cena.
And that's the way WWE is looking at it. And I guess the only reason I would say otherwise is because for me, when you look past WrestleMania, John Cena is the number one guy in most cases. But to me, don't forget about Brock Lesnar. Don't forget about Batista. Don't forget about Randy Orton's rematch clause. If obviously he's going to lose it. I'm 99% sure of that. Come, Monday, he's going to start looking into that. Batista, Brock Lesnar. I think all of those guys are in line before you see Daniel Bryan, John Cena. So John Cena is not even going to be elevated in my mind. Again, now that could change. That could be different. Maybe I'm completely off base here. But I think WWE wants to get more out of some of these other guys. Now that Batista is a heel, they really need to get their money's worth for him because he's been nothing less than nothing more than a failure at this point since they've returned. And it's not really his fault. I think that as a heel, though, he gets over very, very well. And I think that especially with the dynamic between him and Daniel Bryan, some of that shoot aspect, that aspect and stuff that they can play into the storyline, I really think Daniel Bryan and Batista is a very intriguing matchup. And if Daniel Bryan has the title, I see that being a place WWE goes well before they go back to the John Cena well. And so for me, you've got Brock Lesnar most likely in line, and I could see Brock Lesnar and Batista in a match very soon. I could see Brock Lesnar potentially against the champion Daniel Bryan. I could see Daniel Bryan lose it to either Lesnar or Batista, so then you could go get a big high-profiled match of Batista and Brock Lesnar in a championship match. And then I see, beyond all of that, I see John Cena then gets back into the title picture. So we're talking months from now, Nick, and potentially next year before I really I see John Cena being in the title picture again. And if he's not going to be in the title picture, then even more so than usual. Why in the world does he need to win this match? Now, I don't think it hurts Bray Wyatt. By the way, I'm not one of those guys. I do not think it hurts Bray Wyatt to be in this match and lose it. In fact, just being in this match at all is great for Bray Wyatt, but I really hope they give him the win, and I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and say that they do. So in that sense, we disagree there. We'll find out, obviously, what happens. But, Nick, we move on quickly. We got 4 or 5 minutes left here to Triple H and Daniel Bryan. I'm really looking forward, as I said last week, to Triple H getting back in the ring, see how he holds up. It's been a while. I think he's going to do very, very good. I think this is going to be a really emotional match with the fans there. I think this will be one of the first times, depending on where they put it in the card, that you see the fans really get amped up because they know what it means if Daniel Bryan wins. And so I think they're really, really going to be looking forward to this match. And I think it's going to be a very, very good match. I think they'll tell an incredible story that makes you think at the end of this thing or towards the end that Triple H actually has a chance to win this. And it really starts looking that way. And then Daniel Bryan continues and continues. And I do not see any way at all that Triple H wins this match. So I've got to go with Daniel Bryan, but I really do think, Nick, that it's going to be a very good match.
Absolutely. This is one of those cases, like you just said, where it's not so much the end, the result that we're looking forward to. It's how they get there. It's the journey, not the finish line. We all know Daniel Bryan is at least going to win the match against Triple H. But how interesting are they going to make it? We know the match will be very good. These two guys have the potential of having a really fantastic match of the year quality bout at WrestleMania. Will they do some kind of a finish where Triple H and Daniel Bryan both win? There's been the rumors of Vince McMahon coming out and potentially doing something where, turning the main event into a fatal four-way now, Let's put it to you this way. Daniel Bryan will be in the main event.
Absolutely.
Will he be in there by himself?
Will Triple H be in there
with
too?
Batista and Orton? I don't know. Will Triple H be there with him? I don't know. He's going to be there. I think we can all agree on that. And I think it's very exciting how we see them get there. None of those scenarios have to happen. For me, Vince McMahon doesn't have to come out. There doesn't have to be some kind of screwy finish where someone makes a decision to make it a fatal four-way match. I would be totally happy with a great singles match that sees Daniel Bryan beat Triple H clean. Because you got to remember, if Daniel Bryan doesn't beat Triple H cleanly, then you're going to get all of the negative reactions from everybody saying, oh, see, Triple H wouldn't do the job for Daniel Bryan clean. They still had to book Daniel Bryan to look weak against Triple H because Triple H has to bury everybody and he's got too big of an ego and yada, yada, yada. So you're going to have those voices that will complain if Daniel Bryan does not cleanly defeat, either pin or submit Triple H at WrestleMania. You're going to have the people who are going to complain that Triple H is not allowing him to get over. I don't think I'm going to be one of those that looks at it that way, because this whole storyline has been Daniel Bryan battling against the corporate machine and, them throwing every curveball that they could throw at him. So they may even throw more curveballs at him at WrestleMania. But that end result is what I'm looking for.
Well, and I guess that's the part.
Seeing him in the main
that's
event.
The part where I'm not sure I think needs it needs to happen that way. If this was on a Raw, or if there was still more time to build it up, I could see a swerve where Triple H actually wins it, and then Vince McMahon comes out and does all that. This is all going to happen in one pay-per-view. People that are already watching it are already going to be watching it. Now, so for me, I don't really see a swerve as being necessary. I could absolutely see it happening because it's WWE for after all, but I don't think that it needs it. The swerve doesn't help you sell more pay-per-views at that point. It doesn't help you, really increase anything. And so even though, again, with Vince McMahon and stuff, being around, it won't, if he's going to be coming back, if that's something that he wants to do, that could always happen. And it really wouldn't bother me necessarily, but why not go ahead, make it a really, really well-told match. Somehow Daniel Bryan overcomes, and then you go on to the main event picture where you actually have a couple of options. And so I guess we're going to have to find out what they do. But personally, I just see Daniel Bryan winning a very, very good match where they throw everything they can against him. And I do see some screwy ending stuff going on, but I don't think it's actually going to cost him the match or the win necessarily. Won't be surprised if it happens, but I'm going to go ahead and just say Daniel Bryan wins. Nick, are you going with Daniel Bryan? All right, so Daniel Bryan with the win, and then we move on, obviously, to Randy Orton, Batista versus Triple H or Daniel Bryan. And Nick, personally, I think it's just going to be the triple threat. But again, you never know; it could be a fatal four-way by the time this is all said and done. As far as our prediction, real quickly before we wrap up, obviously, I say Daniel Bryan goes ahead. They give us what we want. What this has been building to for months and months and months. There is another option. I mean, they could easily decide that they do not want to do it just yet and give it to a guy like Batista. I will say unequivocally, 100%, I do not think Randy Orton walks out as the champion. I would say Batista has a better shot of that happening, and even Triple H has a better shot of winning the title before Randy Orton holds on to it. But I'm going to go ahead and say Daniel Bryan wins this match, and the closing moments of WrestleMania 30 is the entire New Orleans audience, the 80,000 roughly fans that are in attendance doing the yes chant, and we get finally exactly what we want, what fans claim they want, with Daniel Bryan as the new WWE World Heavyweight Champion.
Chris, I'm going to agree with you there with the finish. I just think that, as far as Triple H's involvement in the main event, I think it's only necessary if they're going to continue Triple H's role on television after WrestleMania. If they're not going to, then, Daniel Bryan can just dispatch of Triple H and then go on into the main event. Triple H might even try to, because he's, maybe it's trying to get revenge because Daniel Bryan beat him earlier in the night. He may try to get involved in the main event, but, Daniel Bryan's able to overcome that too and win the bout. And I don't see them going with Batista as the winner. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Randy Orton has no chance of winning this. He does not walk out the champion. I think what we're going to see here is Daniel Bryan winning. I'm going to go with Daniel Bryan winning. You've got 75,000 plus doing the yes chant at the end of the show. And then I think Daniel Bryan goes on to feud with a heel Batista. And that's what keeps Batista up in the main event picture. That keeps him in the title hunt. And then, of course, Randy Orton's going to be hanging around for a while because he'll have the rematch clause in his contract, which we'll probably see at Extreme Rules. But I'll tell you what, if they're going to keep Triple H going, to me the most logical thing is you have Bryan win. Bryan goes on to feud with Batista for the title, and then you could very easily have Triple H blame Randy Orton, saying, you weren't, we put all of our trust into you. We made you the face of the company. You failed us. and then potentially Randy Orton and Triple H could have some kind of a feud. I don't know how realistic that could be, depending on who works as a babyface, who works as a heel. Orton is in no position to turn face right now.
I don't think he wants
He's got to remain a heel.
Yeah.
But I think for at least the immediate future coming out of WrestleMania, you're still going to see Orton, Batista, Daniel Bryan working together in some fashion before then maybe you see Daniel Bryan, Batista in a singles feud.
I mean, I do think that Daniel Bryan and Batista makes sense, but I as far as what you were mentioning earlier about Triple H and his role going forward, unfortunately, they've set it up to a position now where Daniel Bryan versus Triple H and Stephanie McMahon is really the only opponent for Daniel Bryan that fans care about right now. Randy Orton obviously is not the guy. They haven't really had that interaction. Batista really hasn't had a lot of interaction with Daniel Bryan either. Daniel Bryan's going to be inserted into this match with very, very little chemistry between him, Randy Orton, and/or Batista. So that's the unfortunate thing with Daniel Bryan right now is after WrestleMania, and if he ends up winning it and we get the moment that everybody's longing for, he still doesn't really have any chemistry with a guy like Batista or Randy Orton. Randy Orton especially, which is why I think Randy Orton very quickly gets out of the title picture after WrestleMania. Batista, though, he has a lot of beef after Daniel Bryan wins at WrestleMania. At that point, Batista has a lot of beef with Daniel Bryan because he cost him his shot. And he really does have a good heel story to go off of at that point. So Daniel Bryan versus Batista, I do see as being kind of the immediate thing they want to try to get to very, very quickly post-WrestleMania. But I think Triple H has to remain involved in that. Him, Stephanie, and then maybe even Vince McMahon at some point, Nick, can come back and be involved if they want to get him in the mix as well. But I think Triple H has to continue because otherwise I almost fear for Daniel Bryan as champion, Nick. If they don't have Triple H and Stephanie there and the Authority throwing everything they can, I'm not sure how long Daniel Bryan stays as relevant as a champion as you'd like as a fan to see him if Triple H doesn't continue putting him over in the sense that he has. Him and Stephanie, obviously the Authority in general, really, really pushing Daniel Bryan to that next level as well. I don't see him getting that with just normal feuds with a Batista or anybody, not yet anyway. So I think Triple H has to stay involved. But we both go with Daniel Bryan closing the night as the new WWE World Heavyweight Champion. So there's our picks, obviously, guys. We want to know what you think. This was pre-recorded, but we will be obviously watching Raw tonight. So let us know what you think. You can tweet me at Reality of Chris on Twitter. You can tweet Nick at Nicky Pags. And, of course, let us know on WrestleZone.com in the comments section of Raw tonight what you think. And then, obviously, it's this Sunday, guys, WrestleMania 30. Looking forward to it. Don't forget, tonight, immediately after Raw, Wrestle Reaction, a very special edition of Wrestle Reaction, live from New York. Frank Manzo, Nick Paglino, tonight immediately after Raw. You can watch it on, of course, WrestleReaction.net and also on WrestleZone.com. You can watch it live from there as well. So, guys, enjoy Raw tonight. And, hey, the next time we see you will be after WrestleMania 30. So next Monday is a can't-miss edition of Voice of Wrestling. Of course, check out voiceofwrestling.com. Guys, for Nick Paglino, I'm Chris Cash saying so long. Enjoy. No, you got to do the other thing.
The new sign-off.
The new sign-off. Enjoy WrestleMania 30, everybody. We'll see you next week right here on
buy some gloves
of Wrestling. Later.